Priest, goalkeeping coach. He's now over in Sweden these days, and people know him through his media work, talking about David De Gea. So I won't labour the point for them because there's a lot of other bits and bobs going on. Your take on De Gea and where he is this thing becoming, almost, you don't want to say terminal, but I mean, it's a 2-year slump now, and fixable maybe is the better way to put it. Is this thing likely to be fixed anytime soon?
Well, soon. There's not got long left anyway this season. The temptation might be to leave it to see what happens at the start of next season. The goals at the weekend there, I mean, the first one particularly, you look at the little flick on by Giroud, and it kind of should get to it, but now and again they sneak by you because it's low to the ground, it's from an odd angle, that stuff. And anytime any mistake happens or someone does something, I try to forensically take it apart and explain why it happened, and there usually is a reason. I can't give you one of them for the goal by Mason Mount. I really just can't. He's just there. There's plenty of space. It's not travelling. There is kind of no real concept of an excuse for that. It's just really weird, really bad, really lacking in concentration. And considering, I suppose, the thing that Man United fans, I think, was he the Player of the Year twice?
Four times. 4 times.
4 times?
Yeah.
Well, twice ago, I know that for sure, but 4 times. So there's, some good feeling in the bank there. But when you see, certainly your number 2 goalkeeper is better in the air, coming to collect balls. He looks more comfortable when balls are being crossed in the air. That's before you start taking away the fact that he had one thing better than just about anyone else. As a shot stopper, it was stunning. You're actually beginning to lose that a wee bit now. So there's not really an argument for him. If you look at anybody else, goalkeepers seem to be treated differently. But they've got this kind of persona thing going on. If you're not playing well enough, get out, somebody else come in and it's your turn. And then you try and work your way back in again. Shouldn't be any more complicated than that. But because of the numbers, because of the cost, because of the fame side of it, all that stuff, it's all linked in together. It should be much simpler, right? You're not playing well enough, get out. You just keep on working until you're good enough to get back in again, until this guy makes a mistake. But whether that's going to happen, I think they're probably looking at it. We were probably having similar conversations about Kepa a wee while back, and they make mistakes. They can get away for a few weeks, but you're absolutely right. He's not been at the standard that he had been for a long, long time. And he still has some great saves. He has some great saves against, Chelsea at the weekend. They had a couple very, very good saves. That's not the point. That is definitely not the point. The goalkeepers, that's expected. But you do the bread and butter stuff. You absolutely do that. And he's kind of beginning not to do that. And the fact that he's not great with the ball at his feet either. I mean, there's a lot. No, he seems to be being left behind.
Yeah, it's an amazing fall from grace. So pre-lockdown this season, there was the Watford goal, the Ismailia Sarr ball that just inexplicably went through his hands. There was the clearance, which ricocheted off Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And then post-lockdown, there was the Spurs mistake. And then he was beaten at the near post, Junior Stanislas against Bournemouth, I think it was. I mean, none of them on their own are horrific. It's just that it's all adding up. And if you look at the broad stats, I read it earlier on, since the start of last season, there have been 7 errors in the Premier League alone, which have led to goals. Only Martin Dubravka has made more mistakes. You are talking about the guy who was pretty much the best goalkeeper in the world, is the interesting thing. David Priest did not feel that there are fundamental issues with his technique. Now, Mark Bosnich does think there are fundamental issues with his technique. Priest thinks, well, it served him for long enough and certainly well enough. So it's more of a psychological issue. This probably goes back to World Cup 2018. He conceded a really bad goal from a Ronaldo shot. You just wonder, has he lost his nerve in some way or lost a certain confidence, or is there some jitteriness there? But he is liable now, and this is the question, if you're Ole Gunnar Solskjaer with 2 massive games upcoming, he is liable now to make a mistake out of nothing, and he can expect lots of shots coming his way over the next 2 games as well. So if you're Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and he says, look, I'm fine, at the back of your mind you must be thinking to yourself, I'm not sure, are you? And you will be looking at Romero.
But I'll be honest with you, I'd be going with Romero, and wouldn't even be considering it too much. I would be going with him. He's not done particularly badly anytime that I've watched him play. And as I say, there are big parts of his game which are important. to Manchester United where he is stronger, and it is that shot-stopping thing that set him apart. And if that's not working to anywhere near the same level, and it isn't because he's making these mistakes and some more simple ones, then he has to make that decision. But the other side of it, we go all the way back to another Man United goalkeeper. Remember Jim Leighton? I don't know, who was dropped, was it a cup final replay?
Yeah.
And it destroyed Jim, destroyed the relationship with his manager. The fallout was absolutely enormous. To go back to your initial question, the initial question is, do they lose confidence? Yes, 100%. It's maybe more than anyone else, than any other position. And I've seen it with quite a few of them. There was, even really, really good ones. I can remember the period with Petr Cech. There was a period where every ball that came in the box, it's okay, I started looking away because I know he's going to just come and collect it. He's going to come and catch it. There's not even a thought. There's utter belief, utter confidence, everything. Now, a couple of injuries happened. One very bad injury happened. When he came back after, lots of things were as good. He was never as good at that again. There was an edginess. He started punching stuff that he would always have caught before. And that wasn't I'm going to technically change. That was a part of confidence that something's gone. And I have seen a good number of keepers over the years. It's quite often after an injury, but it's just as likely to be after, they make a number of mistakes, or they might in their own head think, well, this defence in front of me isn't great. Can I go back to one of the stats here? I'm really wary of stats and goalkeepers. I'm really wary because Dubravka had more mistakes than him. I think Dubravka had a brilliant season. The reason being, he's had to do so much more, and there is more stress on errors. Because you can look at Kepa and look at his numbers just now, and his mistakes will be limited, probably. But the percentage of goals that are scored compared to percentage of shots looks awful for him, looks absolutely dreadful. So you manipulate those stats whatever you want. The one guy I'm actually backing up here is Dubravka.
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, there might be 10 of his teammates turning to him and saying, geez, thanks a million for that because we're getting off scot-free this morning. Chelsea dominated United. What did you make of the game?
Am I allowed to say I enjoyed it?
You are, yeah.
Yeah, I did, because I was at the Chelsea game against Sheffield United and they get beat and they were bullied and they were outplayed. Tactically a bit out of thought as well. And it was interesting watching and thinking, well, they look very young, those kids out there today, against a gnarled old outfit and a well-organised and well-structured outfit like Sheffield United, and you think this could actually fall apart. Frank Lampard says a really interesting thing, which is an unusual thing for managers to say. I learned a lot today. I learned an awful lot today. And I thought, that's unusual, because he's not telling you what he learned. He told you one or two things, like he'd learned that his team weren't loud enough and they needed to be a wee bit stronger personalities and shout a bit more. That's one thing, but it's not what he really learned. So I was interested to see the reaction he had. The reaction he had in the next game against Norwich was get experience in. Absolutely expected that, and expected exactly the same in the semi-final. But the other thing he learned was he went back to the 3-4-3, which everyone spotted, but it was a slightly adapted 3-4-3. And yes, he learned all that thing about the personalities and the strength of them and what they need to deliver, all that stuff. But he did this brilliant technical thing during the game, which after 5 minutes, he spotted it right away. Overloaded their right-hand side all the time, right? So they've got Reece James, right wing-back, hammering down there. Willian, hammering down there. Azpilicueta, centre-back, right centre-back, hammering down there. And they're all going on to a kid. He's a good player. He is a good player. But they're all going on to Williams. And time and again, they're just flooding, overdoing it, overgoing. And the poor kid had nowhere to go, and the crosses were coming in, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer hadn't changed it. And I'm thinking, Frank, yeah, you did learn something. Exactly what Chris Wilder does all the time. He gets that extra centre halfway back three to overload now and again in some areas. And because it's unexpected, it completely skews everything. And it looked a mess and a shambles. And I'm doing a kind of analysis of the game as we're going along for who I was working for. And I'm saying, I can't believe I'm not seeing this. This is incredible. Because if I'm playing on the left against that, I'm thinking, oh my God. Now, there's lots of other things, Giroud was amazing, and or the personal thing you can see that are obvious. But that tactical learning thing that Frank had done after such a disaster, and I thought, God, I'm impressed with this. The team had to be right, the tactics had to be right. They got lucky that United A had a poor do and B didn't put out their strongest side. But tactically, that little thing that he'd done that twisted it, and they got the first goal out of it, and then they just destroyed them from then on in. So, from a tactical point of view, I was really, really impressed with Chelsea on the occasion.
Okay. Meanwhile, and they do like a managerial change, Watford have really, 2 games to go. Nigel Pearson, I think from when he took over to now, would have had them based on form either 12th or 13th in the table, give or take. Obviously the West Ham defeat on Friday happened, and they have said, you are gone. And so Hayden Mullins and Graham Stack are going to take over for these final 2 games, which they may need nothing from if they get lucky, but they may well very need something from. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
Initially amazed, stunned, because certainly there's not that many people in the game that think that he's done an awful lot wrong. I mean, the team looked well organised, they've not had great results, but then they will have, as we know, worse results before he turns up. The players seem to be behind them. Yeah, there's some suggestions, some ructions at half-time, but, you kind of want that. You need that now and again. You need, someone to say, look, get out there and fight, all that sort of stuff. And if it means riling them a wee bit, Pearson knows that's a necessary thing to do now and again, and they should be big enough to cope with it. It just doesn't seem any of those things. It seems like the ownership have just went, once again, no, we'll just flip another card. And it means little or nothing to them. Now, if they flip another card and yet again they find themselves still in the league, they can just walk away smiling again, because they've flipped plenty of cards. I mean, was it Badger, Billy McKinley, he last a few days? There's loads of them. They'll do it all the time. If they go and flipping those cards and those cards keeping on coming up right, then fair enough. Because we'll never know, would they have gone up, would they have gone down, either way. But what we also will never know is, had those other managers been given time to put their personality and a structure on it, they could have built something. And I did hear the other day someone saying it's like a mini Chelsea, the way they used to do it all the time, just swap. But that's kind of hard on them, because that's 3 this season so far. It seems bizarre, and I don't want to get biased about it, but I'm kind of talking to you because I used to play. As a player, I'd hate it, and I don't know another player who would anything other than hate it. A managerial change is tough because a lot of tactical things change, but if you're changing all the time, you just don't have belief in the structure anymore, and you probably don't really know what your team actually stands for after a while, and that's not good. That doesn't help.
Yeah, there was a piece in The Athletic, and that sentiment was there on behalf of a number of players, just confused by the whole thing and don't see a long-term future there. It seems Nigel Pearson and Gino Pozzo became engaged in what The Athletic called a heated exchange of views. I feel like that's a euphemism, after the West Ham game. But Pearson wasn't so worried that he didn't go and spend 20 minutes with David Moyes afterwards and have a cup of tea or whatever, and was blindsided by the whole decision. It seems a couple of players knew before Pearson knew. Troy Deeney has come out this evening and said there were no fists thrown at half-time. The gaffer didn't put his hands on anybody. He was frustrated. He gave us a firm talking to. No one was fighting. No one was punched. No one was tickled. There were no hands thrown, is what Troy Deeney has said. He has also come out to say, I won't be picking the team. That word is also out there, that it'll be Mullins and Stack and Troy Deeney sort of picking the team. I don't know. I mean, you get a managerial bump when things are rock bottom and it seems like the players want the manager out, and just being freed of that manager gives everybody an impetus. But it doesn't feel like that situation, and I don't know how that lack of continuity can help when you're going into games against Arsenal and Man City.
It's a flip a card, it's a roll of dice. It isn't anything else other than that. Yeah. It's a couple of new ideas. Somebody else comes in, might just switch it about there, but there's no knowledge behind it. There's no big master plan behind it. If kidding is on, don't believe it, because there isn't. They don't know something that we all don't know. But making a change like that, it might be something. I always look behind it, because when I've been on the other side of it, being in chief executive roles and things like that, you realise that sometimes it's a smaller thing. It's a thing that you never thought could have the effect, such as Pearson might have this shouting and balling match, right, with ownership, right? So he has this shouting and balling match, right? But being a football person and old school in certain areas, we'll walk away and we'll carry on tomorrow and we'll be smiling tomorrow, or even we'll have a cup of tea in an hour or something. But not everyone's like that. They walk into this environment where football folk can do that and feel comfortable. But there's plenty of offices these days, you go and do that and they'll want you fired 10 minutes later. It's a different environment. And it's when those two environments clash sometimes. And I've been in that environment before where I'm thinking, well, that guy doesn't understand football the way we all, and I say we, I had to learn how to be like football people, but the way they can take that sort of brashness. And if they don't take it and they don't expect it, and also if they have a high esteem of themselves that they should never get this, and they feel if they're undermined in front of other staff, then that's enough of a red line to get rid of a manager. And it may be something as simple as that, and that wouldn't shock me at all. But I still think it's a bit daft, because you're running a business, and what you do is you do whatever's necessary, especially if it's short term, till now to the end of the season. You do what is the best thing. I just can't see how this can be in any way considered to be the best thing to do at this specific point.
Yeah, I think though you've probably hit upon something. So we have the two worlds. We have Troy Deeney at half-time saying he gave us a firm talking to, and in football speak, we all know what that is, and they will just get on with it, and that's routine. But managing upwards is part of the job, and maybe Nigel Pearson going off in a football way with somebody who's from the corporate world, to them is almost shocking. And I suspect a lot of football managers will have to bend to the new reality. I don't think the new reality is going to bend to them.
You could be right. I mean, I've seen managers talking up but forgetting to take the football voice off.
Yeah. And
directors crying. And they're going, what are you crying for? I'm just putting my point across.
Yeah.
Actually, tears streaming down, and I'm going, I can see the two worlds. I've kind of moved in the two worlds, and I'm thinking, that's why there's a guy like me in between them usually to keep them apart, because I can do the translation bit. And sometimes if you miss that translator bit or that buffer in the middle, it can be difficult. And that's, but someone like Pearson, I've played against him, I've known him a little bit, and there's no reason, he won't hold back, he'll just be himself. I don't think he sees any reason why he should be anything other than himself. But from their point of view, well, we own this business, we run this as ours. Why are you talking to us like that? And there are some directors and owners and chairmen who you are basically the staff, and we don't expect the staff to talk. There was a great many years ago. I was playing for Chelsea, and Ken Bates was the chairman at the time. I got on great with Ken now, by the way, but he kind of looked upon the players not in a positive light a lot of the time. And we got somebody to ask why we weren't allowed up in this executive box, because, a lot of people wanted to meet some of the players after the game, and they were asking us up, and the chairman never allowed us up. And we got somebody to go and ask him why. And he told this lady, if you owned a company, would you let the cleaning staff eat with you? And that was his thoughts towards us. Now, that's kind of then, but there's still some people that think that way. And if you think that way, and those two worlds collide, it can be sparks. And that wouldn't be surprising me. It's something as simple as that.
Yes. Well, I'd say that's particularly the case at Watford. So they have Arsenal, Man City. I mean, this is the craziest thing I've ever said, but on current form, they may have a better chance of nicking a point against Man City than Arsenal right now. David Luiz, Pat. David Luiz, you are one of his defenders. Did you see his interview post-game with Des Kelly on BT Sport?
No, I didn't see the interview. I kind of moved on afterwards, but I thought he did play brilliantly. But
he came across just incredibly well in the interview. I think everybody who saw it was swooning. Twitter was awash with love for David Luiz. Talked about, Des was kind of saying to him, listen, there was a lot of criticism of the team after the Man City game, and Luiz said, you can say it was about me. I know it was about me, sort of smiling. And Des Kelly said, yeah, okay, of you. And he talked about humility, that he went in and took responsibility and worked very hard over the last while, and not getting carried away. Just came across incredibly well. I mean, if you see it, it's on Twitter, and you'll find it. And a lot of people thought similarly. So, I mean, I'm not going to say he's the world's greatest or anything, but I sat there and I thought, yeah, maybe Nevin has a point. Maybe this guy's worth keeping around. Seems like a good pro to have around the dressing room as well, potentially.
Well, you know that line I gave you the other week there that Chelsea have lost a hell of a lot more goals since he's gone.
Yeah.
But it's actually also, I will argue against myself now. I know that personality. I know what he's like. I know the effect he can have in dressing rooms. You know, he's that kind of, you know, the Christian loving kind of guy who there is a real Christianity in there, and it's about the love of everyone and helping everyone. That's him. It's no effect. It's no act. It's not, I've found the Lord and it's a scam. It's this kind of guy. He's got that love in him for everybody else. And he does things for the love of things. And when you know that kind of what he's like, and the fact that he is just a ball of fun, but he's clever as well. You know all that, and then everybody else is seeing the daft big guy with the big bushy hair who must be a bit stupid, and you're going, why can't you see? How come you don't understand this? The reason being you haven't heard it, you haven't seen him, you haven't been in his company, all that sort of stuff. And that's what we all get without football. I mean, but every footballer, and most people in the public eye get that. Some just get it more extreme. You've got a public persona and people think a certain way of you, and it's not you. And particularly if you don't do a lot of interviews and you don't, it's maybe English wasn't your first language, all that sort of stuff. But you talk to people that worked with David and players, it's always a good idea to talk to people's workmates. Wherever you are in the world, like you can ask for bosses and things like that. Talk to the people that men and women worked with, and you'll get a really good view of the personality. Not just one or two people, but a broad spread above and below. And he is so deeply loved at Chelsea still by everybody there that it's not a fluke. And not everyone, people leave and they go, I quite liked him. It's different. They absolutely deeply adored that guy. But that adds to my slight bias on his favour.
Right.
I will admit to that. It does add to that slight bias on his favour.
But that is a part of the story, though, and it's funny you say that because I didn't realise the Christianity thing. I mean, I guess a lot of that Brazilian team are, but it's less kind of obvious with him when he's in Premier League mode. But Karen Carney, who was at Chelsea, she wrote a piece on the BBC website a while back, earlier this month, and this was after Luiz was offered a 1-year extension, and she was saying, I know why. You know, it's not just that he's a player. And she talked about at Chelsea, for instance, that his leadership qualities were incredible. She said, when I was at Chelsea, he was always passionate about the club. He always wanted the women's team to do well. He was very motivational. He went out of his way to find me when I was injured because he knew I was upset. He used to sit with me and he'd check in with me every now and again. He would say to me, it's just in the mind, you can get through it. Those little conversations are important, and that's probably one of the reasons he's been given another year at Arsenal. And that ties in very much with what you're saying. It's hard to put a value on that. It's hard to analyse that.
It is. I've got a friend of mine, Sophie. She's mad keen. We've known each other since I was 19, and mad keen Arsenal fan. And when David was going there, she was going, oh my God, what have we done? And I was saying, no, trust me, don't worry. You'll love him within a year. And she actually does. She really does now. No, they get the mistakes. They all get it now. They all understand it now, and some will never forgive him for them. But they do understand the effect they have on others. And he is one of those people who will look after others. Now, there are people like that, and they're often the pilloried ones. Now, we're not going to go back into the John Terry discussion, which is not dissimilar, that within the group, they are astonishing people to be around. Yeah. But looking at them from the outside, you see this character is different. I mean, and I'm fortunate, one or two of the people I got to know, like, another classic one was Diego Costa. Like, you're going to tell me what everyone knows what you think he's like. He's just the biggest, daftest, stupidest boy you've ever met. And that's it. You know, and everyone thinks he's this evil moustache kind of wearing bag.
A brute. Yeah. Exactly.
And it's kind of not that. And I learned that years and years and years ago. And it just gets accentuated when these people are in the public eye. And the worst part is some of them then play up to that stereotype. And that's when it gets really confusing for people in the public to really understand who that person is behind that player, who they can only judge by the way he acts in the field.
So, clock is beginning to come against us. Spurs-Leicester was on over the weekend as well, and there was Arsenal-Man City. I don't know which of the two games you want to hone in on.
Well, the Arsenal-Man City one, it's kind of weird, because when I went to see the Arsenal play Man City, the Etihad there, Arsenal was so dreadful and City was so brilliant. Yeah. But I was watching Manchester City up at, I was at the game against Bournemouth. Bournemouth, easily the better team. Easy, the better team. Man City just looked knackered. Totally knackered. And I thought, but that's the second team. And then they go out and just, against Arsenal, they're the exact, against Arsenal, they're exactly the same. And you're thinking, whoa, that's a bit weird. You don't do that twice in a row. And it's just whether they have actually just run out of gas now, Manchester City. And Arsenal, as we see, are maybe coming up and looking maybe the best they've looked at any point this season. So there's that one. The Leicester one, they are falling off the edge of a cliff, and that's just injuries. I think injuries and complete, which I mentioned to you, time and again, we all know there's complete desperation for Vardy to score. If he doesn't do it, then you're struggling, and you can't rely on that. But I think maybe the biggest thing of all the games that stuck with me is Harry Kane. How unbelievable is he?
Welcome back, Harry.
And it's still, to this day, I say when I look at players, I'm always trying to dissect it and understand it and tear it apart and get the reasons why they do things. And I watched the lad Greenwood, who has this unbelievably weird, unusual technique which nobody can stop, and I love it. It's brilliant. I know what it is. I couldn't have done it myself. So this kind of half-step early shot. And you look at Harry, and I still don't know what it is. I just don't. He is a world-class finisher, but he's not particularly quick. Yeah, he's accurate, but he gets that ball for the third goal, and he's so wide, and you think, no chance. And then he doesn't actually do anything particularly special. It just kind of rolls inside, and it doesn't even throw a shoulder or anything. And it's amazing. And the fact that he just does everything simply and perfectly right, and he is that good old-fashioned natural goal scorer. I'm staggered and stunned by how brilliant he is just now, and I think he's the one that my jaw's on the floor at him after the weekend.
Yeah, well, he's about to turn 27. It will be interesting to see if medals become a big priority for him. And it's now or never territory for Kane if he is going to make that move, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, funny enough, I was talking to a bunch of Chelsea and Spurs don't like each other, right? And I asked 6 Chelsea fans, right, tell me up front, would you take Harry Kane? Would you love him? He's a Spurs. Every hand goes up. Every single hand goes up. Yes. And he just beats everything. You would take him. And, the work rate's great as well. The attitude's brilliant. The intelligence of the movements, all that's all sort of great as well. But you're right. Is it Real Madrid? Is it Barcelona? Is it Manchester United? Is it, Liverpool? Is it? He can make his choice and go anywhere he likes. And you're right. It's probably, if it's going to be any time, it should be this summer. It really should be. A wee bit later than that, it's probably going over the edge because signs a 4-year deal with somebody. He's 32 at the end of that. The value's down off a cliff. So whoever's buying him after this year, is basically that's money gone. And there's not many clubs that like to do that of the top echelons.
No, it's true. On a very last point, on City, is it far more likely that they've just run out of steam than perhaps they're putting together some kind of block training to peak for Champions League?
I wish I could say it was the latter, but I don't think it is. Okay. Because they wanted the FA Cup as well. We absolutely wanted the FA Cup as well. I gave them that, absolutely gave them that in the league game. That was no problem. That's fine against Bournemouth. But not in the semi-final. Absolutely not in the semi-final. So I think from somewhere they need to get the best out of a lot of the players that weren't producing it. And even Kevin De Bruyne was giving the ball away. I mean, that was staggering. So at the moment, and even watching people they need a striker that can go and give a little bit of help now. With Aguero not there, they're completely reliant on Jesus. Now, he scored a brilliant goal against Bournemouth. Fantastic. But apart from that, looks a long way short at the moment, and you're not going to win the Champions League without a striker.
Pat Nevin, thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Pat Nevin with us there, as he is every Monday. OTBAM this morning and every morning across your weekday schedule, 7:30, all our social channels or on the OTB app. They had Kenny Cunningham on this morning, by the way. Here's what he makes of the De Gea situation and what should happen.
What do you do? What do you do if you're Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and week in, week out, oh, he's the best goalkeeper in the world, I still have faith in him, and then he does that twice in a match? What do you do?
Yeah, I think we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure if it's a massive decision for Solskjaer to make. I think he's backed him enough now, Solskjaer. I don't think I mentioned some time ago there might be a decision you have to make in the summer. Dean Henderson coming back to the football club potentially from Sheffield United. He's had a great season there. I think it's a big step up coming from Sheffield United. Don't get me wrong, to the regular Manchester United goalkeeper. My gut feeling told me he was going to stick with the guy. They give him the big contract. Publicly, he's come out and supported the goalkeeper time and time again. So I think he's going to stick with him. I don't see anything changing. I think the guy will be there next season. As long as Solskjaer is certain that the guy is focused, he's totally committed to the football club. I don't think there'll be a big change there. I take your point, Jerry, in terms of mistakes, and there's been a number of them over the past, maybe you could go back 12 months, 18 months. He hasn't been at the level the last couple of years for Manchester United that he was a couple of years before that. That's an absolute given. But I certainly wouldn't write him off the guy. There'll be a bit of noise around him, I'm sure, over maybe the next couple of weeks. But I don't envisage it changing this summer. I think he'll stick with him. I think it's the right thing to do. I think he will bounce back, De Gea. And I think the more interesting issues around the Manchester United team are in different areas of the pitch.
So that was Kenny's take this morning. The lads are back with you tomorrow morning, 7:30 as usual. All our social channels or the OTB app. We'll bring you some Brian Kerr thoughts next.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. Less flashy than a Jurgen Klopp smile, but just as effective. Gamble responsibly. See wwe.net.
Back on Track with Bobby Kerr.
On this week's Back on Track podcast, we continue to find how businesses have coped, how some have thrived, how some industries are adapting in this new COVID world. This week, it's all about hospitality, and we're joined by the Restaurant Association, Adrian Cummins, along with Pat Crotty, he's the owner of Paris Texas Bar in Kilkenny, and Liam Griffin from the Griffin Group of Hotels.
Back on Track with Bobby Kerr, a new podcast from News Talk.
Thanks to Bank of Ireland.
Listen and subscribe to the series at newstalk.com or on the News Talk app.
This is an important message for Leaving Certificate and Leaving Certificate applied students. It is now time to opt in to receive calculated grades. You must opt in on the Calculated Grades student portal between 12 noon on Monday 20th of July and 4 p.m. on Monday 27th of July. To opt in for calculated grades, go to gov.ie/leaving certificate.
At Volkswagen Financial Services, our solutions are expertly engineered to put you in the driving seat. Choose the flexibility of PCP, low-cost HP finance, or the convenience of leasing. Add extras like servicing and maintenance plans. For Volkswagen, Audi, Skoda, Seat, or Volkswagen commercial vehicles, discover financing options that match your needs and your budget. Talk to your local dealer or visit vwfs.ie/affordability. Volkswagen Financial Services. Affordability engineered for you. Finance provided by Volkswagen Financial Services Ireland. Subject to lending criteria. Terms and conditions apply.
At VHI, our health team online is ready to take care of you. Which means no waiting for important services like physiotherapy for your aches and pains or speech and language support. And best of all, they are fully covered on all our VHI plans. To book an online appointment right now, search VHI Online Health. Terms and conditions apply. VHI Healthcare DAC, trading as VHI Healthcare, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland and is tied to VHI Insurance DAC for health insurance in Ireland.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power. Chasing down the competition with the momentum of a Man United Champions League charge. Gamble responsibly. See wwe.net.
Welcome back. Still Wolves 1-0 up at home to Crystal Palace. 65 minutes on the clock in that game. If you missed it earlier, Everton beat Sheffield United 1-0 and it was a 0-0 draw between Brighton and Newcastle. This Friday, 1 o'clock, we're giving you the chance to win €1,000 in our weekly game show, Know Your Football. The prize fund has been reset. The rules are simple. You answer all 15 questions correctly and you'll win the money. You can register at quiz.otvsports.com and then log in before 1 o'clock on Friday to play along. And Know Your Football is brought to you in association with Paddy Power. PaddyPower.com for their offers. Visit dunlewy.net for more information on responsible gambling. DUNLEWEY.net. Spurs 3, Leicester 0, the scoreline yesterday. We brought you that game live. Stephen Doyle, Brian Kerr on commentary, and they had a chat afterwards.
OK, it's finished. Tottenham 3, Leicester City 0 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. A real hammering for Leicester City, who just could not find any way to create a goal. And perhaps Brian Kerr, a bit of a surprise result maybe coming into this game. You wouldn't have expected Tottenham to get such a big win.
Well, they've been in better form lately, Spurs. Since the break, they've managed to find a way to win a few games. And beat Everton, they beat Arsenal in home games, even without nobody in the stadium, or without anybody in the stadium rather. And a good win at Newcastle during the week as well, 3-1. So they've been in a bit of form, whereas Leicester have been struggling for a bit of form, apart from a very good performance against Sheffield United to win 2-0. Not long since they were beaten 4-1 by Bournemouth. And overall, since they've come back off the break, they've not done too well. They've only won 2 games out of 8. I think that is now 2 wins, 3 draws and 3 defeats. Comparing it to how they were before the COVID closed down, I think they were in much more consistent form than that. So it hasn't worked out well for them, but I think the injuries have been really costly for Leicester. Losing both full-backs, Chilwell and Pereira, who are really good players. Then Fuchs, who gives them an experienced cover when he comes in, he's not available, has been massively damaging. Maddison has been a key player for them off the front.
As well.
Yeah.
Albrighton as well.
Albrighton, another experienced, very good player. It's just too many for them to handle, but a good performance by Spurs today.
It would look like, you know, United and Chelsea are now in the box seat for the Champions League qualification. If it did work out that Leicester City aren't successful in qualifying for the Champions League, overall, do you think the owners will be happy with what Brendan Rodgers has done this season? Will they back him again in the transfer market, perhaps invest in another couple of players to try and get that top 4 place next season?
I would think so. I think they have done their work very well. The recruitment over the years has been very good. I mean, when you look at Soyuncu out of the picture for the day and how good a player he has proved to be. When they sold Harry Maguire last year to Manchester United for whatever the figure was, 70-80 million, people said they missed Harry Maguire badly. Well, they didn't really, because they had Soyuncu there who was waiting on his chance to become a regular. But I think in general, you know, Iheanacho hasn't worked out to be the real deal. He hasn't been consistent enough as backup for Vardy or as a partner for Vardy. But you look at Harvey Barnes, good signing, he's done well. Pereira, exceptional signing, he's done very well at right back. And in general, they don't make very many mistakes, and I think they will back the manager again. I think they will be, given how comfortable they looked in second place at times and in third place. Now they're level with Manchester United and not really in control of it anymore. They'll be frustrated, but I think they've had horrendous luck with those injuries to so many players we mentioned. And the suspension of the centre-back Sancho has been of his own making, but it cost him dearly today. The centre-backs, the trio, Ryan Bennett, Wes Morgan and Johnny Evans didn't play well today. So I think Leicester will invest, but whether they can keep up with the progress that would surely be made by Chelsea for one. Manchester United look like they're on the up. Manchester City will invest heavily. Liverpool will probably go again, but we know they're going to be in contention. What Spurs are probably not going to invest again this year. I don't see them going in heavy. They have too many debts, and for various reasons they won't. But Wolves probably will. But Leicester, until this little period where they've had the excessive injuries, they've been very competitive.
Harry Kane was the man of the moment this afternoon, notching up to his 17th Premier League goal for the season with those 2 in the first half. Brian, when he was away injured and during the shutdown, he gave an interview in which he didn't sound overly committed to Tottenham Hotspur. You know, he was kind of, you know, he basically said, look, if there was a club where I could go to win trophies, you know, we'd have to consider it. So what does Harry Kane do now? You know, if they could get into the Europa League, that's not the competition Harry Kane wants to play in. He wants to play in the Champions League. He wants to win trophies. He's 26 now. Time could run out. We've seen it in the past for like great strikers like Gary Lineker, you know, who move off to what they think are greener pastures and it doesn't work out for them. So I'm just wondering what your take is on Harry Kane. Should he start maybe looking for a way out, or does he try to stay with Tottenham and see if he can win under Jose Mourinho?
It's hard to know really, but what you have to say is on his form so far, he's been ferociously loyal to Spurs. That they had such a good season last year, ultimately, I mean, they finished fourth in the league and they got the Champions League final, but it was covering up a lot of serious deficiencies. I think they lost 20 games last year, in competitions. They came close to winning the Champions League. They were unfortunate in the final with the penalty given against Sissoko early in the game, which kind of put a cloud on the game to a degree, and Liverpool won easily in the end. But this season has been a bit of a disaster for Spurs. I mean, they were ineffective in the cup competitions, didn't do great in the Champions League, went out timely to Leipzig in the last 16, knocked out at home by Norwich in the FA Cup, which they'd have been hoping to have a run in. So, it's not been a good season for them. You would think that Harry Kane has got to be thinking about his future and saying, am I happy to be the English centre forward who scores loads of goals for my country and my club, but never seems to be in contention to win trophies yet? We were in the Champions League final last year, but it was a strange one. They were fortunate to beat Manchester City, and they were fortunate to beat Ajax in that extraordinary game. Will that happen again? It's unlikely. It'll be somebody else's turn to do something extraordinary in the Champions League. But I would think that they're a long way short of challenging in the Premier League, and I'm sure Harry Kane is clever enough to identify that, irrespective of who the manager is, whether it was Mourinho or anybody else. I think he would look at it and say, we're a long way short, and I don't think the club are going to invest in the sort of players that are going to make a sudden change to where we're at. So, it's not hard to see a situation where if Spurs had an extraordinary offer for Harry Kane, that they would accept it, and where he would accept moving on from a club he obviously loves dearly, and he is so admired by supporters, all the supporters, players, staff, and all that. But it isn't difficult to see a situation where Harry Kane could move on, where Spurs finished 6th or 7th in the league and haven't really featured this season at all, and he is getting to his next birthday, he'll be 27. But let's wait and see.
And just to finish, Brian, big weekend for supporters of a certain age of a famous club, Leeds United, who would have been well supported in Ireland, many years ago. I know there may be some one or two younger fans who followed after their mums or dads, or whatever the case may be. But can you maybe just put into words what it means to have Leeds United back in the Premier League, top flight of English football, 16 years away? It's such a big club. It's a one club town, one club city, I should say. Apparently you can't even get a season ticket the last couple of years. It's that well supported.
Yeah.
It's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, and they've had a very bad time for many years with lots of different owners promising the stars but delivering nothing. And they've had some disastrous things have happened to them, like the selling of the training ground. And I think that the stadium itself was even sold at one stage. I think that might be back in the hands of the club now. But that era, like when I was a young man, Leeds were such a top team in the Don Revie years. They weren't a well-liked team. They were respected because they hadn't had much success until that era of the late 60s and 70s, and Jack Charlton was somewhat spoken about in the last week after he passed away. But that great team of Jack Charlton and Bremner and Giles in midfield, and Jones and Gray and Yorrett, and all those players, and Paul Maley and Harvey, the goalkeeper, Alan Clark. They were a great side. They didn't win as many trophies as they should have, but they were a great team and a very highly respected club. And then you had the later era when Dave O'Leary had the young players and many young Irish players, and Gary Kelly and Ian Hart in the team, and Steve McPhail the team. They got to semi-final of the Champions League. That all drifted away, and they were down as far as the third division basically. For 3 years they were in the third division, and they've been knocking on the door to getting back to Premier League for the last few years, and they've had got done in the playoffs last season. They've had a few disasters before that where the season disintegrated late on, where it looked like they were going to make it and they didn't. So it was a great relief for everyone that followed Leeds. I don't know whether a lot of people who follow other teams were that overjoyed about Leeds get back, but I think everyone who likes football would see Leeds as a club that, because of the passion of the supporters and the history of the 60s and 70s era and since then, that they should be in the Premier League. We've seen lots of clubs get themselves into the Premier League over the last 20 years of, small stadiums, small gates, but survive. And clubs like Bournemouth, who you have to admire what they've achieved in doing that. But a club like Leeds should be in the Premier League. It'll be interesting to see how they do now. How can they do a bit of a Sheffield United on it? Can they do what Wolves have done? Can they establish themselves as a regular Premier League team in the future again? But I'm sure for all those the elderly Leeds supporters around the place that remember the glory days of the 60s and the 70s, it's a great time for them, and of course for the style of football that Bielsa likes to play. It'd be interesting to see how he gets on. He seems determined not to give an interview in English. That's for sure. He'll be the first one to get away with that if he maintains that next year. I mean, I think Pochettino did that carry on for a good while when he was at Southampton, but eventually he managed to get the words together to do it. But it'll be interesting with Bielsa. He's a very, very interesting guy, and his style of football is very impressive. And I look forward to seeing him in the Premier League when the new season starts.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him sitting on his bucket at Old Trafford next season, Brian. You'll be doing Liverpool against Chelsea on Wednesday night.
Well, just on that one, Stephen, there's a severe slope along the side of where the managers are usually in position, Manchester United. So that bucket, they need to be careful how they place it. Otherwise, he could be rather in a precarious position. He might fall down the hill, the slope. He might have to sit up in the stand where the staff normally sit at Manchester United.
Absolutely. We'll be doing Liverpool Chelsea on Wednesday night. That's live and off the ball. Thanks very much for watching.
There you are, Stephen Doyle and Brian Kerr speaking after yesterday's commentary game. In tonight's action, Wolves have gone 2-0 up now against Crystal Palace, 79 minutes on the clock.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Less flashy than a Jurgen Klopp smile, but just as effective. Gamble responsibly. See www.louis.net.
What is your bliss? To reconnect with amazing scenery and the great outdoors? Or to remain indoors with delicious food and great conversation? To reconnect with family and friends? At FBD Hotels and Resorts, we know nothing is more important than to reconnect with your bliss. Nothing feels better or more valuable. FBD Hotels and Resorts. Reconnect.
What do you look for in a staycation? Is it long, sandy beaches and rugged coastlines? Is it ancient castles and majestic gardens? Or is it picturesque towns and villages? Fingal has all this and more, right on Dublin's doorstep, but with the breathing room of the countryside. Explore a world of adventure during the day, and in the evening unwind at one of our top-class hotels, bars or restaurants. Plan your trip now at fingal.ie/visitor.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Paddy Power. Chasing down the competition with the momentum of a Man United Champions League charge. Gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
So Wolves very much looking again at European football next year. Let's check in with Alex Winter at Molineux.
It's Wolves 2, Crystal Palace 0 on the home side in complete control now. The second goal wonderfully made by Adama Traore down the right-hand side, jinking between two defenders, forcing himself some space and putting the ball back for Johnny, who spun and finished wonderfully. Traore having a shot from outside the area, trying to add a third, a little too close to the goalkeeper. And Zaha finally with a moment for Crystal Palace in this second period. They were good in the first half, but very flat since going behind just before the break. But Zaha with a shot from the left-hand side of the area, but much too close to Patricio. And it's 2-0 to Wolves.
So that's them ahead of Spurs now. They're in 6th place in the table, 59 points to Spurs' 58, and looking at European football again next season. They're still in this season's Europa League as things stand. That is us done for the show this evening. OTBAM coming at you tomorrow morning as usual, 7:30. Mount Rushmore treatment has finally reached Dublin, so this won't be easy, needless to say. They're going to initially at least split Dublin into two, so it's north side, then south side, and then they will finally decide on Dublin's Mount Rushmore. So tomorrow, turn of the north side, Kenny Cunningham and Sean Potts from the Chieftains, part of the judging panel tomorrow morning, so tune in for that, Northsiders. And then we're back tomorrow night. Andy Moran and Johnny Doyle are going to join us as well. 2 players back playing football. Club action has resumed. So we'll chat to Andy Moran and Johnny Doyle about what life is like back playing some club action post-COVID break and lockdown. And more besides as well on the show tomorrow. In the meantime, Richie McCormack is in for Tom Dunn. Enjoy that. Good luck.
Give him a ball and he out of grass. He'll give you a move for the perfect pass.